Welcome to a new video. It's been a while that I did a Sony video, and now we're talking about the successor of the Xperia 1 Mark IV, the Xperia 1 Mark V, and also the successor of the Xperia 10 Mark IV, the Xperia 10 Mark V. And we dig a little bit into what Sony announced this week with the brand new Mark V lineup. So let's get started. First, let's start with the successor of the Xperia 1 Mark IV, the Xperia 1 Mark V, and boy oh boy is this a great phone, and I'm really excited to pre-order it right away, because this is definitely a huge step into the right direction for Sony, because what they are doing here is basically they're merging this phone, the Xperia 1 line, with the Xperia Pro line, and they have the Xperia 1 Mark V then, which, yes, combining the best of those here together. And some may ask now, why? How is that even possible? The Xperia Pro I has a 1-inch type sensor, and yes, the Xperia 1 Mark V will have a newer sensor, so not using the 1/1.7-inch sized sensor that the Xperia 1 Mark IV is using, but it's not 1 inch. So what am I talking about? It's 1/1.31 inch, I think it is. Yeah, it is a specially designed new sensor for the Xperia devices that can give you the most of the same kind of capabilities that a 1-inch type sensor can give you. Why did Sony put in the Xperia Pro I in 1-inch type sensor? Because of better HDR, better light gathering capabilities, especially better low light, less noise performance. And why did they not use the full 1-inch type sensor? Because they wanted to make it as thin as possible. So they're cropping in by default and have roughly an equal equivalence of 1/1.3 inch in size when it comes to the sensor here in comparison to other sensors. So basically what we will get is then the main kind of camera sensor of the Xperia Pro I in an improved version, because it's a 52 megapixel sensor that allows us to actually shoot 48 megapixel stills, but it can use the full 52 megapixel sensor readout for video recording. So it's like a special kind of sensor, because usually what you find in such phone cameras are sensors that are a bit squarish, that are cropped into for video. So what they do is, like, you have a square, and this is taken for photos, so you get the full 12 megapixels here on the 1 Mark IV, for example. And for video, it's just like cutting into this square a little bit, so the top and bottom are a bit off. And what they did on the 1 Mark V version is they used a rectangular kind of video optimized version of a sensor, and they are cutting in for photos only. And why can they do this? Because it is a very high resolution megapixel kind of sensor. So 52 megapixels. So we have 1 megapixel there, 1 more megapixel there, that will be deleted for photos, and only 48 megapixels are used. And Sony does know its magic there, or its algorithm already, because they're using pixel binning. So the output will be the same 12 megapixels as here on the 1 Mark IV, but the 1 Mark V will use pixel binning, which will result in better low light capabilities, but also in better details in the picture itself. So very interesting design that they decided to do there. And of course the sensor, I was linking once to this video that explains it very good. I will do it here as well. What they're basically doing is a dual layer setup that they're using for the sensor, where usually you have, like, let's say 1 pixel, and you have like this 1 pixel is divided into 2 different parts here, and this of course then divides the light capabilities, light gathering capabilities a bit. What they did is, like, instead having this 1 pixel split into those two parts where they just moved one part down and the bottom part up. So we have better light capabilities there, light scattering capabilities there on the sensor. Very short explanation, the better explanation you will see in the video for sure, and the more scientific one for sure as well. So very cool sensor, and this revolutionizes a little bit the smartphone market, because what it allows to do is basically build a smartphone as thin as this here, the One Mark 4 for example, but having like the light gathering capabilities, the HDR capabilities, dynamic range, of a 1-inch type sensor. So IMX989 is the one, for example, that Sony is also famously building for various different other smartphone manufacturers that are using it. And yeah, the new One Mark 5 will not use this because they wanted to keep the device and the design basically the same as on the One Mark 4. But yeah, putting a better sensor inside, and I think it really worked out. And when we take a look at here, what we see is here the periscope camera, 85 to 125, and the 60mm ultra wide angle. These they basically kept. I think they optimized a little bit either the algorithm or the optics of like a second generation optics of the 85 to 125mm optical zoom on the One Mark 5, which is very cool indeed. And the only thing that really replaced is then the main sensor here, especially as it is a bigger kind of sensor. They also replaced the time of flight sensor here as well, that you can see on the One Mark 4 still. Yeah, what about the autofocus? The autofocus got better actually. What they're introducing for the first time for Sony is a bit of AI magic. So they're using the word AI to describe a new autofocusing system, AI focusing, that they were using to determine on what to focus on, based upon probably multiple lenses that they're using, or one lens and sensor. I'm not so sure how they do this, but it should work, and it should work nicely, because what they managed to do is eliminate one component to make a bit of room for a bigger main camera sensor that has basically the same light gathering capabilities as the Pro I, and even better. So it's improving on the Xperia Pro I, and yeah, giving you the flexibility and features that you know, like fast autofocus, 4K 120 frames per second recording, now with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, and a new housing that has like a little bit of like new cooling pads inserted. We have way better cooling there on this device. So 4K 120 frames per second. I saw some YouTubers at like, what was it, 24 degrees room temperature in a warm Scandinavian, is this like even possible country? They had like 38 minutes recording time on the One Mark 5, which is phenomenal. I would say I would never get this in 4K 120 frames per second. Wow, so very amazing, unique, this kind of thing. I think the, what is it, ZTE Accent 40 Ultra that I don't have here, you should have it lying around here, also has 4K 120 frames per second on all lenses even, but I think they have a limit when it comes to recording it with it. Otherwise, yeah, the One Mark 5 will keep also some of the features of the Pro I, just like, for example, the mono mic here on the Pro I, that is very good. It's bigger opening, I think, than on the new One Mark 5, but the One Mark 5 will have a voice optimized mono mic on the back. Also here, somewhere on the camera bump on the One Mark 5. I heard the first samples that very cool, especially with the wind filter on. You practically don't need like lavalier or a wireless microphone in most situations, and can get away with without a microphone there, which is pretty cool. Of course, they kept the shutter button, they kept the fingerprint reader there, they kept the volume rocker there, as well as the bezels around the device. I'm not sure if they changed anything around the bezels, maybe made them a little bit thinner as well. But no punch hole in the front-facing camera, or for the front-facing camera. The front-facing camera is still the same as on the One Mark 4, so this might be something where someone might consider, if I have the One Mark 4, do I need to upgrade to the One Mark 5? Not necessarily, because the only thing is like when you have constantly overheating issues and you want the better main camera sensor, because like I said, the ultra wide angle and the periscope zoom are basically the same and in a more advanced version with slightly better optimized software. And this is where I think they made the huge difference. And this is sadly Sony, I have to say that, because probably we would get this upgraded software on the 1 Mark IV, on the 5 Mark IV, or the 10 Mark IV, or whatever, or the 1 Mark III and 5 Mark III, without like unofficial ways. Probably it's working somehow. But they have a new Video Pro app. This new Video Pro app is, in contrast to this one here, when I open this up, you can see it's not working in portrait mode, which might be sometimes handy to have. And then of course also the Photo Pro app is working in portrait mode, but only when you're using the basic mode. So if you go into the auto mode, you can see it's rotating and I don't have a shutter button anymore. And yeah, they fixed this with the new software, and what they introduced as well is finally focus speaking. I think for photos and videos I saw that, which is very, very nice indeed. I hope they also have the audio switching where you can choose between left and right microphones or the rear microphone like on the Xperia Pro I. The only thing that they did not take from the Xperia Pro I are the bad selfie camera. They took the better ones from the 1 Mark IV for sure. But the variable aperture. So we have a variable aperture, actually only two different stops that you can switch between f2 and f4. Nevertheless, it might have made a bit of sense to also include this, but maybe it's getting too thick then, this whole device. So yeah, maybe not the best. So yeah, what do you think about the Xperia 1 Mark V? Is it really a merge of the 1 Mark IV and the Xperia Pro I? And before we go to the Xperia 10 Mark V, just one more thing, because the Xperia Pro I, as well as the Xperia Pro in this case, introduced like the possibility to also input UVC, universal video devices, camcorders or something like this that have this, and allow us to use this as virtual monitor, just like a monitoring with a monitoring app, as a screen for monitoring your real Sony camera, for example, or any other UVC device in this case. And this was a very basic kind of thing. They introduced it with Xperia Pro I. They already put it in the Xperia 1 Mark IV, but it's now also in the Xperia 1 Mark V in a newly super improved version that not only allows you to use zebras, focus speaking, different color profiles and so on, but also recording of content. So you can use your Xperia device now as a recording device for your main camera, which is pretty cool, I would say. I really wish Sony would update the software for the Xperia 1 Mark IV as well, because it is not only hardware based, but it's also software based. It would be so nice to use the upgraded software like the Video Pro app, if it's all of its new features like focus speaking, for example, on this device. It's not hardware dependent, it's just software. So Sony, please listen to your customers. Also at least upgrade the latest, the last generation devices with your new software. That would be very, very cool. At least give us an upgrade plan for those as well, if you want to release them for the Mark V series first, and then maybe later with another upgrade in the year for the Mark IV series as well, so that all the people who bought this very expensive device are not disappointed that they have to buy a new device for getting just a software update. And now let's talk about the successor of this one here, the Xperia 10 series. This is a 10 Mark III, I think. The 10 Mark IV I don't have with me anymore, because I was a bit disappointed, because it was in some ways a downgrade, because this one here has glass and on both sides here, Gorilla Glass, and the 10 Mark IV had like plastic back, made it a bit lighter. But also the downgrade in terms of chips, because this one has a better chip. I think you can record 4K with this one, and the 10 Mark IV had a Snapdragon 695, and this is sadly still the case with the 10 Mark V. So I'm a bit disappointed there. Why, Sony? Why? I know that you upgraded a little bit here and there, but why not upgrading to a Snapdragon 7 Gen 1? For the price of roughly 500 euros that this will cost, maybe a little bit less, it definitely deserves a Snapdragon 7 Gen 1 because everything else doesn't make any sense. We still have a triple lens set up there with a real lens that you can use for ultra wide shots and for main shots, so 24mm equivalent, or what it is, I think 26mm in this case, because we have a new sensor. Yeah, we have a new sensor. Also a 48 megapixel sensor, a little bit smaller sensor, 1/2-inch sized sensor, though also using pixel binning, 60% more light gathering capabilities, Sony claims, and this will give you better shots in the night, especially as this sensor also keeps its OIS and EIS capabilities. So EIS is like electronic image stabilization, but OIS capabilities are very important for low light shots, but also videography should be a lot more stable. You saw it probably when you compared the shots from the 10 Mark III with the 10 Mark IV, but still Snapdragon 695 is like, this is really a downer for me, I have to say. They still have a very large battery here. 5000 milliamp hours will last forever. We know this because the display is still 60 Hertz, even if it's getting a little bit brighter now on the 10 Mark V. It is a bummer that they did not upgrade the processor, because with the new sensor, yes, I like the new sensor. Probably takes awesome shots, especially in the dark, though I'm disappointed by the ultra wide and the telezoom because they did not upgrade those, and it's like very small sensor sizes, and basically you can forget about them in lower light situations, and only in sunshine you get a noise-free picture. If you have like a little bit like a grayish day, then you will see noise definitely creeping in the shot. Otherwise, the 10 Mark V also does not improve on anything when it comes to charging speeds or USB-C ports, sadly, which is a bummer as well. For this price point, I think they should do anything or something. The same, by the way, goes for the 1 Mark V, or is like with the 1 Mark V USB-C port is just still the same, and the speed for charging is also still the same. It's also still the same. No wireless charging on the 10 Mark V. And 8 megapixel front-facing camera, abysmal, I would say. The 8 megapixel ultra-wide and telezoom, forget about them. The main sensor, I think, is good this time. I'm not so sure about the software still, because they're not using the very highly professional software that they have here. They're using like their old Xperia software that you might know from the XZ lineup, but in a very bad version. Basically the version from the Xperia 1 where they redid everything and throw away most of the useful features of the old software and kept only the basics there. And I always had the feeling, yeah, they have a bit of AI here and there, but it is so much worse than the professional software here that it's not making things easier. If you press the shutter and you have to wait for a second or 30 seconds, or not 30 seconds, 300 milliseconds or something like this until you take the shot, which is like you take the shot and take the shot and then cluck. So it's just taking the shots too slow, so very long or very slow shutter speed, which is like not ideal here in this situation. So we will see. Maybe the 10 Mark V has better software optimizations, because I think the 10 Mark IV was a good device for a lower price for sure, because the Snapdragon 695 for over 400 euros, almost 500 euros, unheard of back when it came out. Nowadays, I saw other manufacturers, Honor, for example, also putting this chipset in devices like the Magic 5 Lite, which are very expensive for what they really are capable of. At least Honor puts 120 Hertz OLED screen in there, and Sony still sticks to the 60 Hertz. I would at least prefer 90 Hertz. Even I think Google with its Pixel 7a is now introducing 90 Hertz to their mid-range devices, so it would make sense to have eventual 90 Hertz here. Also would not harm the battery so much. It is what it is. I probably won't get the 10 Mark V this time. It's just like not worth the hassle here. When Sony is upgrading the 10 Mark V, or I see other tests that show me the software is really matured here. I maybe get a little bit weak there, and in a weak moment will order it just for testing, but it probably will not last here. Only if it blows me away, then eventually. Otherwise, I cannot imagine this. Because for the price of this one here, I would get roughly 460 or 470, roughly 500, under 500 euros. I could get the Nova 10 Pro, way better camera systems here, way better chipsets. I could get the Honor 70. I could get so many phones, Samsung A55, 54, the Pixel 7a, so many good phones that it does not make any sense then to get the 10 Mark IV. Even though I like this device because it's so handy, it's so lightweight and easy to use, and especially very small, and you don't have like the feeling that you're holding like a luxurious item there, but you're holding like a working device, a really work device. And I like this possibility to just take out the SIM tray here, which is also very handy and cool. So what do you think about the Xperia announcement? I know it's a little bit dry of a video here, but I wanted to give you my opinion right now on the Xperia lineup, and I wanted to do another Xperia video, to be honest, because I have so many phones, so many other stuff to do, but no Xperia video in a very long time. So Xperia fans, Sony fans, I'm still there, still using them, and mostly also for my videos using them. So behind the scenes, basically filming most of the stuff, and some of you might see this as well. So this is everything for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Write down in the comment section, what do you think about the new Xperia Mark V lineup? Are you missing the 5 Mark V? What do you expect from the 5 Mark V? And what do you think about the merging of the Xperia Pro lineup with the Xperia 1 Mark V lineup?